Welcome to Moonlight Story. Take a moment now to pause. You don't need to think ahead, and you don't need to revisit the day. Let everything slowly fade into the background. Take a gentle breath in and breathe out with ease. Allow your mind to grow quieter and your body to feel more at rest. Settle into a comfortable position and allow yourself to slowly relax. Take a calm breath in and gently breathe out. Again, a slow breath in and an easy breath out. The morning begins quietly. A small bag sits ready near the door with a few things packed inside for the day ahead. A bottle of water, a notebook, a light sweater folded neatly at the bottom. The bag feels light as the walk begins. The streets are still calm this early in the day, with only a few people passing by now and then. After some time, the buildings slowly become fewer, replaced by open roads lined with grass and trees. The walk continues at an easy pace. Further ahead, a river appears beside the path. The water moves steadily over small stones near the edge while the path follows alongside it. A cool breeze passes through every now and then, carrying the fresh smell of water and damp soil. After a while, a small pottery studio comes into view near the river. The building is simple, with wooden walls and large windows facing the water. A few clay pots rest near the entrance steps. Through the windows, shelves filled with bowls, cups, and unfinished pottery can already be seen inside. The door opens softly. Inside, the air smells faintly of clay and wet earth. A few pottery wheels stand near the center of the room, with bowls of water resting nearby on low wooden tables. The studio is quiet this early in the morning, and slowly, the peaceful day at the pottery studio begins. Lily steps further inside the pottery studio and closes the door gently behind her. The room is cool at first, carrying the faint smell of clay, wood, and damp earth. Morning light comes through the large windows facing the river, falling across the floor in long, soft shapes. She sets her bag down on a small chair near the wall and takes a slow look around the studio. Shelves filled with pottery line one side of the room. Some pieces are finished and glazed, smooth and dry. Others are still waiting, their clay pale and unfinished. A few bowls sit upside down on a wooden table near the windows. Beside them, small cups rest in uneven rows, each one slightly different from the next. Lily moves slowly through the room, lightly running her fingers along the edge of one of the tables as she passes. Near the center of the studio, a large block of clay rests beneath a damp cloth. She folds the cloth back carefully and cuts away a smaller piece using a thin wire tool. The clay feels cool and heavy in her hands as she places it onto the table beside the pottery wheel. Nearby, a small bowl of water sits ready. A few wooden shaping tools have already been laid out beside it. Lily pulls the stool closer and sits down at the wheel. For a moment, she stays still, resting her hands lightly on the clay. Outside the windows, the river continues moving steadily past the studio. The sound stays soft in the background while the room remains quiet around her. After a while, Lily reaches forward and starts the pottery wheel slowly. The clay begins to turn beneath her hands, and the quiet work of the morning begins. The pottery wheel turns slowly beneath Lily's hands. At first, the clay moves unevenly, shifting slightly from side to side as it spins. She wets her fingers in the bowl beside her and presses her hands gently against the surface, guiding it back toward the center. Little by little, the shape becomes steadier. The sound of the wheel stays soft and even in the room. Lily keeps her hands steady while the clay turns beneath them. The cool surface leaves a thin layer of clay along her fingers and palms. After a while, she presses her thumbs carefully into the middle of the clay, creating a small opening at the center. The wheel continues turning while she slowly widens the space, shaping the sides little by little. A shallow bowl begins to form. Not perfect, slightly uneven near the rim, but steady. She pauses the wheel for a moment and dips her hands back into the water bowl. A few drops slide down her wrists before falling onto the table beside her. Then the wheel begins turning again. Lily smooths the sides carefully, using both hands to keep the shape balanced. The clay feels softer now, easier to guide. On the shelf nearby, several finished bowls rest side by side, drying in the morning light. Some are darker where the clay is still damp. Others have already begun to dry near the edges. The room remains quiet except for the turning wheel and the faint sound of the river outside. Every now and then, a breeze moves through the slightly open window, carrying cool air into the studio. Lily finishes shaping the bowl and slows the wheel carefully. She lifts a thin wire tool and slides it beneath the clay, separating the bowl from the wheel. Then she places it carefully onto a wooden board beside the others. After wiping her hands lightly with a cloth, she prepares another piece of clay, this time shaping something smaller. A cup. The wheel begins turning again, steady and slow. And the quiet rhythm of the studio continues through the morning. By the time Lily finishes the second cup, the light inside the studio has changed slightly. The morning brightness has softened, spreading more evenly across the room and the shelves near the windows. She places the cup beside the bowl she made earlier and wipes her hands slowly with the cloth resting near the wheel. Small marks of clay still remain along her fingers and near her wrists. A thin layer of dried clay dust rests on parts of the table now, left behind from the morning's work. Lily stands up from the stool and stretches her hands for a moment before walking toward the shelves along the wall. Rows of pottery fill the wooden shelves from one end to the other. Bowls, small plates, cups with slightly uneven handles. A few flower pots resting near the top shelf. None of them look exactly the same. Some lean slightly to one side. Some are smoother than others. The small differences remain visible even after drying. Lily pauses near one of the lower shelves and gently picks up a cup that dried overnight. She turns it slowly in her hands, checking the shape and the surface. One side of the rim curves slightly higher than the other. She runs her thumb lightly along the edge, then places it back carefully beside the others. Near the window, several small pottery pieces wait beneath a cloth to keep them from drying too quickly. Lily folds the edge of the cloth back for a moment to check them. The clay still feels cool and slightly soft. Not ready yet. She covers them again and moves back toward the table. Outside, the river continues moving steadily beside the studio. The sound drifts in softly through the open window while the breeze moves the edge of the cloth hanging nearby. Lily gathers the small pieces of leftover clay from the table and presses them together slowly in her hands so they can be used again later. Nothing goes to waste. The clay bends easily as she works it back into a smooth shape. After placing it aside, she rinses her hands in the water bowl. The water has turned cloudy from the clay, and faint swirls move through it before settling again. For a while, she simply moves quietly around the studio, straightening tools, wiping part of the table clean, checking the pieces resting on the shelves. The afternoon continues slowly, one small task after another. After spending most of the afternoon inside the studio, Lily steps outside for a short break. The air near the river feels cooler than it did earlier in the day. She walks down the small path beside the building and stops near the edge of the water. A few flat stones rest along the riverbank, warmed slightly by the sun. Lily sits down carefully, brushing a little dust from her hands onto the grass beside her. The river moves steadily in front of her, flowing around the stones near the edge before continuing further downstream. Now and then, the surface shifts where the water catches against a larger rock. The sound stays soft and steady. Behind her, the pottery studio remains quiet. Through the open window, the shelves and tables inside are still visible from where she sits. Lily opens her bag and takes out the bottle of water she packed earlier. After a few slow sips, she sets it beside her and looks out across the river again. On the other side, tall grass moves lightly whenever the breeze passes through. A few small birds move through the trees nearby before disappearing further along the riverbank. For a while, nothing changes very much. The water continues moving. The breeze comes and goes. The afternoon light slowly softens. Lily rests her hands against the stone beside her, still carrying a faint trace of clay along her fingers. Some of it has dried near her nails after working at the wheel for most of the day. After sitting there for some time, she stands again and brushes the dust from her clothes. The break has passed quietly, without hurry. She picks up her bag and walks slowly back toward the studio. Inside, the unfinished bowls and cups still rest where she left them earlier. The room feels calm and familiar as she steps back through the door. And the quiet work of the afternoon continues. The afternoon slowly begins to turn into evening as Lily moves around the studio one last time. The light coming through the windows is softer now, resting gently across the shelves and wooden tables. Most of the pottery pieces have already been placed where they need to dry. The bowl and cups she made earlier sit together near the window, untouched since she finished them. Lily walks back to the pottery wheel and wipes away the remaining clay from the surface with a damp cloth. Small bits of dried clay collect along the edge of the table as she cleans. Nearby, the bowl of water has turned pale and cloudy after a full day of work. She lifts it carefully and empties it outside before filling it again with clean water for tomorrow. Back inside, she places the wooden tools back into their container one by one. The thin wire tool, the shaping tools, the cloth she used throughout the day. Everything returns to its usual place. The studio grows quieter as the work comes to an end. Outside the window, the river continues moving steadily beside the building. The evening air drifting through the open window feels cooler now than it did in the morning. Lily takes one final walk past the shelves before leaving. She pauses briefly near the pottery pieces she made during the day. The clay is still soft and slightly damp. They'll need more time before they're fully dry. She leaves them exactly where they are and steps back toward the entrance. After picking up her bag, Lily turns off the lights near the work tables. The studio becomes dimmer, lit mostly by the remaining evening light coming through the windows. She opens the door and steps outside. The river moves quietly beside the path while the last of the daylight settles over the water. Lily closes the studio door gently behind her and begins the walk back home at the same slow pace she arrived with earlier that morning. And the pottery studio remains by the river, quiet and still at the end of the day.